Exploring the relationship between the surge of cloud computing and data center technologies is on the minds of tech insiders, as new symbiotic relationships are strengthening the need for innovative services and technologies to continue to support data growth. In the TI Now studio to tell us much more about the technologies and new business services growing out of cloud computing and the data center boom is Daryl Tanoh of Solutions Reservoir and Lisa Huff of Discerning Analytics. And Lisa and Daryl, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. I want to start the conversation sort of giving our viewers a broad brush assessment and a summary, if you will, of where we are right now as far as cloud computing and the support of the cloud by data centers. Daryl, I'll start with you. Virtualization technologies allow for agile solutions leveraged by the data center. Just to kind of break it down for the viewers again, can you give us an example of what that means?
Well, cloud computing and data centers and virtualization just go hand in hand. I mean, the cloud computing and virtualization in a sense exist in the data center. So if you think of a good example of something that's new that people can remember that didn't exist would be something like consumer storage, Carbonite, and now things on iCloud and Google Cloud. I mean, those are things that go hand in hand with mobility and storage, ultimately, and storage in the data center.
Lisa, agile solutions leveraged by or through cloud computing, but leveraged and supported by the data center.
Yeah, a great example is everyone on vacation, they take pictures they want to upload to Facebook, right? Well, that has to go somewhere. It goes to a data center closest to them, and then it gets replicated all over the world, and that's what virtualization helps do. So all your friends can see your pictures on your Facebook page.
Now, you guys both mentioned storage. Let's talk about speed. We're all looking for speed in our systems, our solutions, our networks, and in the data center. Of course, we can talk about 100 gig, 400 gig, 800 gig, whatever you want to talk about. But let's focus on, if we can, Lisa, and I'll start with you, on optical technologies. Where are we on that right now?
Well, optical technology in the data center, we're really in a transition period right now between 10 gig to 40 gig and 100 gig in the data center. So servers are now being upgraded from 1 gig to 10 gig, and that pushes aggregation and core networking into 40 gig and 100 gig. It's happening today. In 2012, about 40% fiber. By 2017, it's going to flip to about 60% fiber. So it's really growing inside the data center.
Daryl, of course, telcos, service providers want to add new services and new layers on top of their connectivity services. How is the data center allowing them to do that?
Well, I mean, probably cloud. In one word, it's probably cloud. I mean, what telcos and sort of service providers in general have done is really move into cloud. If you think in terms of companies like Amazon, Rackspace, now part of IBM, these are companies that in effect kind of didn't exist in that space just five or 6 years ago. So that's really all been enabled by a combination of computing and virtualization and data center. Some telcos are moving into the business. CenturyLink, for example, bought the old Savvis assets, which were cloud and data center. Cyber is something, or doing cyber for companies is something that's also being enabled, by this movement.
Lisa, let's talk about not the sexiest topic, by the way, but we're all learning data center architectures. You can talk about top of rack, end of rack. As far as 40 gig speeds go, and that achieving that type of capacity and speed, what kind of architectures should we be looking at?
Well, the network inside the data center, the legacy networks are all hierarchical, right? It's been access where the server connects to a switch, usually end of row, but now we're moving the switches closer to the servers so that we're getting data rates closer to the servers, right? So that the network is flattening in order to do that, and virtualization is really what enabled that, or drove that, I should say, actually, because you want to be able to move those virtual servers wherever you need to load balance your data center. And so the networks are getting much flatter. They're going from 3-tier to 2-tier now, and they call it leaf spine.
Daryl, we had a chance a couple weeks back to just go over our discussion today and talk about some talking points we wanted to bring up. And you mentioned in that conversation that cloud was still in a state of immaturity. Can you tell us what you meant by that?
Well, if you look at just the trend of development of any kind of industry, cloud is really only 6 or 7 years old. And for an industry that you expect will go on for who knows how long, I mean, we're in the very, very early stages of that industry. So I think just a priori, you just sort of know it's immature. Where I see the immaturity, certainly is there are still plenty of companies who haven't even moved to virtualization in the data center. I see it in terms of some kind of things like pricing, where I see that some things are really difficult, and those kind of encumbrances over time in service product development sort of fall away. Just sort of agreements, things like that. So things that, for me who spend a lot of time in service industry, that I think are hallmarks of sort of immaturity. If you look at where products are, service products in the beginning and where they are 10 years later, you say, well, we got comfortable with that, we got rid of that. We got comfortable with that, the risk wasn't what we thought, we got rid of that. So I think those are things that you see that, to me, I mean, I still see in the cloud business, and over time those things will just sort of fall away as people get comfortable in that operating environment.
Daryl, yesterday TIA took its staff and their membership and some of their non-membership as well on a data center tour not far away from here in Sterling, Virginia. We saw one data center after the other, whether it was in fabrication stage or at completion, but it was just one after the other after the other. Again, in our pre-discussion, you said that there's a slowdown of data center growth. How could that be?
Well, this is a complicated question because there are so many dimensions of it. I think in terms of a growth rate, we're at the point now where there's more data centers, so it's hard to really sort of sustain that rate. Right now we're in a period of tremendous mixing of data centers that are moving from corporate environments where they didn't even realize it was data center, if you will, into the data center or into the cloud. So there's those factors. There's a factor of that corporate center moving 4 or 5 racks into, say, a data center. Some people are saying instead of those 4 or 5 racks, putting 4 or 5 racks in the data center colo play, which is where things were like 5 years ago when the move was. It's moving those things just straight into cloud. So there's just really a lot of mixing going on. There are new technologies that in effect are more sort of space efficient, power efficient, which also impacts the growth of data center. So I think we're not seeing an overall decline in the amount of data center space. Probably in the U.S. we're seeing a change in the rate of growth, but it's a really complicated question, and there are just lots of right factors in play. But whereas, let me just say this, whereas 3 or 4 years ago, if you went out to Ashburn, there was building going on, just sort of everywhere, and now there's building going on, but just not as dramatic as it was then.
Well, to add to that, there are a couple of things going on. I would agree that there's a slowdown in the rate of growth, but it's mainly because enterprises are moving to colo, and that rate is growing tremendously. So it's not, it's kind of an artificial slowdown, right?
Now, were the reasons behind the co-location is security, cost? What are the primary reasons behind that?
Well, that's why the enterprises weren't going to colo. They wanted to make sure they were comfortable with the security. The cost, it's probably cheaper for them to go to a co-location where the co-location has the larger network and can use the volume, so to speak. And they can also only pay for what they use as well. So there are several models.
Mm-hmm. Daryl and Lisa, I'd love to continue talking to you, but as you know, TIA's headquarters here in Arlington is hosting TIA Data Center Workshop, and I don't want to make you guys late, and quite frankly, I don't want to be late either. So I'll let you guys go, but I would love to follow up on this. Of course, this is a topic we can talk about for years to come, so appreciate your time. Thank you. And thank you for the latest information on our topic today. Go to TIAonline.org and click on TIA's Report on Cloud Computing and Data Centers, part of TIA's Market Review and Forecast series. And stay tuned for more reports on cybersecurity and privacy, the connected car, and robotics. So long.